Welcome back to the Bullshit Filter, Tonto. How's it going there? How's
Hey,
your snow apocalypse going in Virginia?
actually, today was beautiful. It was near 60 degrees, sunny. So I went outside with basically a t-shirt and jeans on. So, one day snow, one day sun. You just go with the punches.
Why do you have a bird cage behind your bird box? Is that
This,
is that a bird box, or is that a put a dick in the box? You cut a
the
hole in the box, put your dick in the box.
whole,
That
the
is.
hole, and don't make me prove this, but the hole is almost big enough. No, it's a Cajun. Play a beatbox. You play the
Get it out.
beatbox.
Give us
Yeah.
some beats. Show us how you play
Actually,
it.
I was going to, but the
Hmm.
reason that's why it's out. But one of the strings is broken, so every time you shake the box, you hear whang. It's busted.
So
So
you put
well,
your dick in it instead. Yeah.
I don't waste anything. I don't waste anything.
That's your philosophy.
Pretty much.
Um, it's Wednesday, the 24th of February, where I am, 23rd of February, where you are,
Yes.
2021. I only really have one story to talk about today. This could be a short show. There's not much happening in the world. I mean,
Thank God.
America went over 500,000 COVID deaths, but, we all saw that coming a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's not over.
Uh, there's been a thing happening in Australia for the last week or so that is worth talking about. You've
Right.
probably heard about this. I think it's had some coverage over there in the US
Mhm.
media and around the world. About a week ago, Facebook in Australia started preventing people from posting links to news articles.
Right.
And a lot of other stuff got caught up in it as well. We couldn't post links to a whole bunch of government sites, my sites. I couldn't post links to my own fucking sites, to my own Facebook groups. Like, sort
Right.
of in typical Facebook style, they just swept everything up and fucked everything up. But
Yeah.
I want to talk about what's been going on because I don't know about over there, but certainly the media coverage of it here has been particularly slanted because it's about the media.
Right.
It's
Yes.
and the news organizations that are part of this
Right. Who
obviously
have a vest?
providing,
Right.
yes,
Who have a
invest,
vested interest? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they're providing a somewhat slanted version of it. But it's really interesting to look into this. So the core of this is, for the last couple of years, the Australian government, which is a conservative government,
Mhm.
which is relevant to a point, has been threatening to put into place legislation that would force Google and Facebook to
Right.
pay media organizations money for having the right to
Mm-hmm.
link to those news organizations' news stories on their
Right.
platforms. And the way that takes place with Facebook is obvious, when people link to news articles. With Google, it's
Yeah.
those news stories appearing in search results.
Right.
Now, why is the Australian government getting involved in this? Surely this is a commercial issue. These are
Capitalism.
just, yeah, these are two businesses, news organizations on one hand, Google and Facebook on the other hand.
Right.
This should be something that they can sort out themselves. But obviously, the power dynamic is very different. These media organizations have less power than Google and
Yeah.
Facebook do today, and they're not happy about that. They're losing money. Just generally speaking, their business models have been in decline for 20 years, and they're not no signs of them surviving. They had a little bit of a bump, particularly in the US during the Trump years,
Yeah.
because Trump was such a great news generator that they were
Yes.
able to sell a lot more eyeballs than they normally could. They'd been in decline for years.
Right.
And so somehow these news organizations managed to get the Australian government to run an extortion racket on their behalf to
When you
force
right.
Google and Facebook to pay them money.
When you say that, do you mean Murdoch or a legitimate coalition of the press
Well,
of
there's two
news?
main large media players in this
Mm-hmm.
country. Um, well, maybe three, but two particular ones. Rupert Murdoch, yeah, he doesn't
Right.
live here, but he controls a large percentage of the media. I think 70% of the newspapers in this country are Murdoch controlled papers.
Wow.
And the other one is Kerry Stokes. He owns one of our 3 main television networks here, free-to-air networks. And he's very close with our current administration. I think he gave away the federal treasurer's daughter at her wedding or something like that.
That's cute.
And Rupert, for many years, has had the ability to determine who our government is, which he also does in the US to a lesser extent. Obviously, Fox News played a large role in getting Trump elected in the first place. And he does it in the UK as well. He has an enormous amount of influence. But, you know, there's currently a thing going on in this country where a former Prime Minister of ours, Kevin Rudd, has been pushing a petition to get a royal commission. It's like a federal government funded independent inquiry into media control in this country, and particularly the way that Murdoch uses his media power to influence governments. Basically, what happens in Australia is if Rupert doesn't like your government and the policies that you're pushing, all of his media properties just start slandering the fuck out of you, and just going on the attack and white-anting you until your own party turns on you and replaces you. You know, we can do that here. The government, we don't elect a president, or we don't elect a prime minister. We elect a party.
Right.
And
so we switch them out.
Yeah, the party can just get rid of their leader, prime minister, and replace them with somebody else. Midstream, right? Midterm.
Right.
And that has happened on an increasing basis over the last 10 years. So you know, this is being done. It's basically an extortion racket. Now, Google caved in fairly early because news results in search for Google is pretty important. People go searching for, you know, particular stories. They jump into Google, they search for it. They want it to turn up. And if Google had to get rid of all of the news out of Google search, it would probably algorithmically, code-wise, be a nightmare. How do you tell it not to show all of these different news sites? I'm sure they could do it, but it would be a bit of an annoyance for them. It would kind of break Google search, I think. And make it less effective. Facebook, on the other hand, said, fuck you, we're going to the mattresses. So they refused to play ball. The government actually has passed this legislation. I think it's passed through one house, not necessarily both houses, but it was about to pass through both houses.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask. So as far as I understand it, either Facebook and the government or whoever was directly in negotiations, or it looked like, you know, like you said, it passed one house, it's going to maybe pass another house. And so Facebook just decides to go from 0 to 60 like that. We're just cutting. And I guess, is that like Facebook calling their bluff? Oh yeah, well, let's see what happens. I mean, it seems like a hammer blow. Yeah,
it's exactly what happens. And you know, the ironic thing is the way it was depicted by the media here and by the government here was, Facebook are using their power as a large organization to try and get what they want.
Bully.
Yeah. Well, no kidding. What are the fucking news organizations doing? They're doing exactly the same.
Yeah. That's why we talk about this stuff, because they try to skew public opinion a certain way.
But the way it got positioned here in all of the media coverage I saw was Facebook's a bully. They're trying to get their own way by using their power. Yeah, well, fucking
David
no kidding.
Goliath.
Yeah. It's exactly what the news organizations are doing. They're literally getting the government to force other companies to pay them money.
Nice.
Now,
Can we do
that? I'm working on it. Yeah, I am working on it.
My man.
You know, the reason I pointed out this is a conservative government, two reasons I pointed that out. Number one, they're more closely aligned with Murdoch anyway. They're big supporters of Murdoch. The current government, the current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, aka ScoMo, aka Scotty from marketing, as he's often referred to here, because before he got into government, he ran Australian tourism. He was sort of the guy who was marketing, and a former prime minister of ours on the other side of the political divide, Paul Keating, said, "Oh, I remember when he was just Scotty from marketing," and so that name sort of stuck. Scotty from marketing.
Yeah.
He's a fundamentalist, happy clapper Christian who makes a big deal out of his Christianity. It's kind of tacky and embarrassing for an Australian politician to do that, but he's probably the most out there evangelical, happy clapper Christian prime minister we've had.
He owns it
so far. Yeah. There's lots of photos of him,
kind of like this,
doing this
like
in
this,
church. He's really doing the
Nazi
doing salute to Jesus. Jesus loves himself a little bit of fascism.
A lot of metaphors in there. Okay.
So, so Facebook basically said, well, okay, fuck you. Let's
go.
See how you like it. So they just cut access to everything. And of course, then they all went back to the negotiating table. It was a negotiating tactic. And now Facebook announced yesterday that they're going to re-allow within a few days linking to news stories because the government came to the table. Now, the government's calling it a victory. Facebook's calling it a victory. But so far what's come through when you read into the details, the government has agreed to amend the legislation the way that Facebook wants it amended. Facebook are willing to pay, just not as much, and they want some different circumstances, some different things put in about arbitration and how that would work if they can't agree with the media organizations and what they're going to pay.
Can I ask a question real quick? Because obviously you know a lot more about this than I do. I just assumed that, I wonder really how much per month Facebook would be forking over. It's not like they can't afford it, but I guess I saw it as a can of worms. If Facebook says yes to Australia, then does that mean a lot of other countries are going to go, oh, by the way, we're changing our deal with you? I mean, is it the beginning of a slippery slope for Facebook? Is that one of the reasons why they're fighting it so much?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's partly principle, and it's partly that. Like, this is a test case that will be rolled out around the world. And so the way that it's being positioned by the government and by the media here is that, well, Facebook's making money off of our work, off of our content, and that's not fair. They're selling advertising on the back of the eyeballs that go to their platforms to see our content. And so they should be sharing that money with us. That's our content. Facebook and Google's view is, well, hold on, we're advertising. What we are doing is basically providing free advertising for your content. If anything, you should be paying us. We're sending people.
I should have become a lawyer.
From our platform to your sites, because if I link to a news story in Facebook, I post the link in, it gives sort of a photo and a headline and maybe the first sentence or two. And if people want to read the whole story, they click on it, they go to the news site, right? Where the news site can then sell advertising around it. So they're the two sides of the argument. Now, from my perspective, I want people to link to our posts, our stories in Facebook. It's a great thing. It is
word of mouth,
advertising.
Sharing. Yes,
exactly.
Yes, yeah.
And but from my perspective, the internet, the very core purpose of the internet, from the very get-go, was hyperlinking. That's when Tim Berners-Lee sat down and designed the World Wide Web. Okay, even if you go back further into the 70s, when the architect, what's his name? I interviewed him on my show, on my old show years ago. Jesus Christ. Okay, go look this up.
I think Al Gore invented the internet. That's what he told us in the 90s. So.
Well, actually, when I interviewed the architect,
I
call him that because that's what they called him in.
I want to be called Maestro Matrix from now on, right? I want a title. I want
Vince
the headline.
Cerf, Vince Cerf and Bob Kahn, when they sat down and wrote the basics of TCP/IP in the
Mm-hmm.
70s, the whole idea of it was to link Department of Defense and university databases together. So if a nuclear war broke out and it took out one information center, the whole system wouldn't come down. The information
Backups.
we'd lost and all the networks would be able to communicate. It was a way of allowing computer networks to communicate with each other.
Right.
But then when Tim Berners-Lee sat down on his next computer in the late 80s and coded the World Wide Web and invented HTML, etc., the whole idea was to link information together. It's all about linking. The World Wide Web was always just about linking things to each
Right.
other. This site to that site, this information to that
It's
information.
it's neutral. It's a linker, right? Isn't it
It's a
supposed to be?
linker.
It's a right. No, but I guess my thing is capitalism, laissez-faire, buyer beware. It's just an entity. It's an on-ramp. Use it, don't use it, whatever. So I have a hard time seeing that. I see what the Australian government is saying, but just don't rely on Facebook or whatever, even though it has become this phenomenal thing. I mean, I would think that the principles of capitalism would dominate here, but I guess it's an inconvenience to certain people in Australia. So they just forget capitalism for a moment and they want to get paid.
Yeah, well, look, and Australia doesn't have the same sort of extreme laissez-faire approach to capitalism as your country does.
Right. Thank you. The Wild West.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of Deadwood writ large across your country.
For the next 30 minutes, you know what the rest of that line is. Go ahead.
Yeah. We do have a lot more checks and balances in place.
Right.
Which is the only way I can get Facebook to do anything. When they when they banned my ability to advertise a few weeks ago, I had to threaten to take them to one of the oversight bodies in Australia that stops businesses from being complete cunts.
Gotcha.
And they immediately did what I'd been asking them for 2 weeks to do, and they were telling me they couldn't do it. As soon as I threatened them with that, they did it.
They could.
When they stopped me linking my own pages to, in Facebook, my own Facebook groups last week, I jumped on a support chat with them and asked them to fix it. They sent me back some pro forma email that was bullshit. And I said, fine, fix it within 12 hours or I'm going to take it to the ACCC. And
Ta-da.
miraculously got fixed. So I've worked out the magic key to get
that's your own sledgehammer. Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, it's like when my insurance company at the time, Allianz, refused to pay my insurance claim when I got stuck in Canada a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
They refused. I said, great, I'll take it to the ACCC. I started a complaint. Well, it's actually the ombudsman, I think, in that case. I took it to the ombudsman, and boom, they paid it. So we have certain protections in place, and I know you have the Consumer Protection Agency. I think it's what it's called over there. You have certain things as well. But this isn't the government protecting consumers from big businesses.
No.
This is the government protecting big businesses that have made billions and billions of dollars in profits over the decades.
Yeah.
And who failed to reinvent themselves successfully when the internet came along. And so they're now in decline and losing revenue and profits that they believe are rightfully theirs.
Yeah.
Against the guys that actually won the internet, the guys that did come along and innovate and now have the dominant position. So it's a bizarre situation when the government has to get involved to protect a declining organization from a new one. Now, that shows you how much power, though, the media organizations still have, because the government is riding in like the cavalry at the last minute, like fucking Blucher at Waterloo, to save Wellington's, scungy British ass.
Right.
Coming in at the last bizarre.
Don't upset anybody. Tell them said anyway.
Well, there's no British people listening to this.
Okay.
A bizarre Napoleon reference for people
Right.
who understand that.
Check out the podcast. Anyway.
Yeah. It's shows you how much power the big media organizations still have, even though, I think their direct reach has been declining for years. They're still influential where it counts.
Yes.
Which is basically, as I understand it, a very small circle of people in Canberra who sort of determine what's going on with their own party and their own party's power base. You don't, as it turns out, to be a powerful media organization, you don't actually need to reach the people or have influence over the people anymore. You just need to reach the in communist countries they call it shit, my coffee hasn't kicked in yet this morning. The fucking the pointy edge of the proletariat, the vanguard.
Right.
Vanguard.
Just control them.
Proletariat. Yeah. You just need to control the influences.
Right. The lever pullers. Yeah.
The political strategists, the lobbyists, the people who influence the lobbyists and the political strategists.
Yeah.
If you can wield power over them, it reminds me in many ways of we've been talking about the CIA on the Cold War show. And one of the CIA's tactics that we've started to talk about a little bit after the creation of the CIA in the late 40s throughout the rest of the Cold War, and even today we see it going on in places like Venezuela. All you need to be able to do to influence a country is find one corrupt general or one corrupt politician who's willing to take your money and overthrow your government, right?
Yeah, I don't need to control troops, just the guy who tells the troops what to do. And it's a lot cheaper that way.
Yeah, or some of the troops what to do.
Right.
It doesn't even need to be all the troops. You just need a breakaway group.
Get it going.
Yeah.
Can I ask just a quick question? So is there any truth, as far as you can tell with your reading, do you think the COVID situation has been affected in Australia? Because I know y'all are doing really well, but I do believe, like here, people go check Facebook for COVID, and now that's news. So it's being blocked. Do you feel like anybody's being hurt? Or if y'all weren't doing so well with COVID, it might be more of a health factor since they can't access that stuff or share information about COVID on Facebook with their friends and family? So it's probably
supposedly Facebook weren't intending to block that kind of government information, although they did block the Department of Health, I think, initially, but then they unblocked it. COVID's not a thing here. We don't even know how to spell COVID anymore. It's so far in our memory. It was like so 2020 COVID, man. Like, we've moved on.
Cassette tapes, COVID, 8-track, Zeppelins, whatever. Yeah. Okay. Just checking. Must be nice.
No, it is nice. Like Chrissy's always like, I can't fucking believe what's going on in the US. We go out, life has been normal here.
Yeah.
More or less.
Right. We've been told that things are going to get a lot better between the end of July and sometime next year. So we've got that to hang our hat on. That's what we've been. So no one knows. But the thing is, no one knows. So, and of course you got the variants, but that's for a whole nother show.
Yeah. So one part of this then is the big media companies still have a lot of sway in the political arena, even though their reach is declining because they influence the influencers. The second part of this is obviously the story of how powerful Facebook has become, where when you have a corporation that can bring a government to its knees. Now, media organizations have been doing that for a long time. And it's not just media organizations. In my psychopath book, I mentioned a story about Labor government here, Gillard's government,
Mhm.
So going back 2012-ish, 2011, 2012. So I mentioned before that a former prime minister has been trying to has got votes on a petition to start a royal commission into the Murdoch government's power. By the way, all Murdoch's newspapers are robustly attacking him in every way possible for doing this right now,
Nice.
in
Yeah.
every avenue possible. But when they knifed him as prime minister back, Kevin Rudd, his name is, they knifed him as prime minister back in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. Can't really
Mhm.
remember. I think it was 2010. And he was replaced by his deputy, Julia Gillard. She became our prime minister. She knifed him
Right.
and did a coup inside the party with the
Damn.
support of the Murdoch press.
Right. Right.
Now, partly what drove that is Kevin Rudd was trying to push a price on carbon, and he was really trying to drive a carbon tax through, and he was going to be successful. There was a lot of support for it. There was even
Right.
bipartisan support. I think Malcolm Turnbull, who would later become prime minister, was the leader of the opposition at the time, and he was sort of pro carbon tax as well. Murdoch and the big mining companies that were in cahoots didn't like this, so they knifed Kevin Rudd, created a whole bunch of stuff about, this is so unpopular, Labor's going to lose the next election if they don't do something about Kevin Rudd immediately.
Right.
And so the party knifed him, replaced him with Julia Gillard. But she promised not to do anything about the carbon tax, but went to an election, didn't win enough seats to be able to control the government
Mhm.
completely, had to do
Right.
deals with a couple of independents. Way it works in Australia is we have sort of first past the post, but you have certain situations, which has become more and more common here, where the two major parties neither of them can win enough votes to control government
Right.
by
On their
themselves.
own.
They have to do an
Right.
alliance. I mean, the
Yeah.
Conservatives have been in an alliance with a minor party, the Nationals, for decades. Anyway, Labor had to do deals with a couple of independents, and the independents were pushing them to do the carbon tax.
Hmm.
So she had to renege on her pre-election promise because she couldn't,
Right.
she had to do a deal.
Right.
So the mining companies spent, I think from memory, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but from memory, they spent something like $20 million on a media campaign, on an advertising campaign, to talk about how if this went ahead, it was going to destroy the Australian economy. It was
Right.
going to destroy mining. Mining companies would just pull out. Thousands of jobs would be lost. The economy would
Doom.
crash as a result
Doom and
because mining is
gloom.
such a,
Yeah.
and basically got it overturned, got her thrown out of government and replaced with Kevin Rudd again, who then went to an election and lost.
Right.
Uh, um,
Jeez.
but they saved themselves. The way I put it in the book, they spent $20 million on an advertising cam that saved them something like $2 billion a year in carbon tax. The mining companies would have had
Good
to pay, right?
investment. I think you'd call that a good investment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Very good investment. So,
Yeah.
it's not just the media companies. The old mining companies know how to play, but they play it with the media, in cahoots with the media, right? Because,
Right.
media is funded by advertising. Who's advertising? Big companies. What do big companies care about? Profits. What cuts into profits? Having to pay a carbon tax. So,
Yeah.
they all have conjoined interests, overlapping interests when it comes
Right.
to things like this.
I thought the interest was getting the truth out to the people so they could be informed and keep an eye. No, I'm just joking. I couldn't even finish that sentence. Keep an eye on the government and the church. But going back to what you were saying a second ago about about Facebook's power, I remember, and this has to be a good 5 or 6 years ago, you were bitching about Facebook and you're like, where's Facebook's competition? I need something that I can go to and I can switch to and I'm happy to advertise with them or whatever. I mean, is Facebook ever going to have serious competition? Because I know fuck all about tech, but I get that Facebook and Twitter in some ways are like apples and oranges. It's not quite the same thing, even though you can do a lot of the same thing. But where is Facebook's competition, or do they
Yeah.
have any that I'm not aware of?
No, they don't really have any significant
So
competition.
monopoly. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is, in a way. I mean,
Right.
the classic tech argument, and Mike, this is the same argument that Microsoft made when I worked there, when
Right.
they were sued by the Department of Justice for having a monopoly and wielding it to
Oh yes, I remember that.
destroy their competitors' business.
Right.
Um, the Microsoft argument at the time was, well, we're not really a monopoly. Somebody could come along tomorrow and put us out of business. We're only as good as our last software product or our last release.
Right.
There's no barriers to entry to set up a new company, a new competitor. And they could come along and knock us off the perch tomorrow. We've got healthy competitors in this area and that area. Yeah, we might dominate in this bit, but we have competitors in this bit. And
Right.
Facebook can point to people that have, they do compete with them in a certain way. Like Twitter
Hmm.
competes with them in a way. Instagram did for a bit, and then they bought Instagram. And that's
Yes.
the flaw in that argument is companies with
Yes.
enough money
Could just.
just go out and buy and
Yeah.
kill the baby in the crib is the terminology that gets used a lot in
Right.
those sorts of circles.
Speaking of which, all of our podcasts are for sale. We will sell out. So I'm just putting that out there. Go ahead.
And
Go
we
ahead.
will literally kill babies in cribs for you if that's what it takes to do that deal.
Yeah, just the check, just enough
Yeah,
zeros. Yes. Yes.
but yeah, like for many years in the internet, there would be an innovator, a new platform that would come along, and it would
Yeah.
get all of the attention, all of the people. But then a better platform would come along 6 months later or a year later, and everyone
Right.
would move to that because it was offering more features and more advantages. And you think about Hotmail was the first free email service,
Oh
which at the
yeah.
time was revolutionary.
Right.
Got bought by Microsoft because it was a competitor to Microsoft's own email products.
Mhm.
And then Google released Gmail, which gave
Mhm.
you more free storage, and so everyone moved to Gmail. Not everyone,
Yeah.
still some people
Yeah.
on Hotmail, but a lot of
Took me a
people moved
while.
to Gmail because they offered more.
Yeah.
And then there were some other, Yahoo had a mail product, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it sort of stalled about 10 or 15 years ago
Oh,
with
right.
Twitter and Facebook. There haven't really been any serious competitors to these people get off the ground. And it is a good question why.
Hmm.
I mean, look, they're going to be hard to compete with, sure, because they're very entrenched and they have a massive user base and they make a lot of money now and those sorts of things. But
Yeah.
the whole promise of Silicon Valley is that you can come along and innovate. You get
Right.
access to capital, you innovate, and you can supplant these people by providing better service, better features, better
Hmm.
price points, all that kind of stuff. But for some reason, you don't hear of Silicon Valley venture capitalists funding competitors to Facebook and Twitter.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't really understand why. Yes, it would be difficult. So maybe potential investors go, I'm not sure you're going to be able to pull this off.
Right.
Maybe it's because so many venture capitalists have so much money tied up in Facebook stock
Yes.
that there's no incentive for them
Yeah.
to compete
Yeah.
with it, right? Or fund
Yeah.
competition with it.
Yeah.
But we
It,
are locked into this thing now where Facebook is powerful enough in this country to just go up to the federal government and say, fuck you.
yeah, very few can do that. And for just the average user, I mean, it's a part of their daily routine. The idea of dropping that and picking up something new and learning that, if you're over a certain age, that's just a huge pain in the ass. So there is a lot of loyalty for Facebook and things like that. Oh, someone's printing something. Sorry. So there's a lot of loyalty as well. But you're right. I mean, it's so ingrained that how do you start over? I am so sorry.
So
Someone's printing something.
my
Yeah.
wife is eating kimchi.
My wife is printing something.
I can smell it. My wife is Chrissy's just
I can
opened
smell it
a
too.
jar of
Right.
kimchi. I'm surprised if you can't. I'm surprised my microphone's not melting from the smell of it. Disgusting. Kimchi.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I
Oh,
don't know. Yeah,
it's
Heather likes it, but
Korean.
I don't.
Oh, she
Yeah,
does? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Disgusting.
Not the
Anywho,
Koreans, just this. Anyway,
no, yeah, no, I love the Koreans. Took Chrissy out for
yes.
lunch at a little Korean restaurant yesterday.
What's that? What does that mean when you took her to lunch? What is that?
Chrissy and I have
What? Okay.
our Tuesdays for us are sort
Kimchi
of
days?
just hang out days. So
Right.
we every Tuesday we go and just work from a cafe all day, go to lunch, go to a movie, go to an art gallery, just take it easy and
Nice.
hang out every
Yeah.
Tuesday. That's our
Yeah.
Fox is when Fox is at school. Fox is at school, so we just go and
Yeah.
I figure,
Now,
we're rich
right.
podcasters. We can do whatever the fuck we want. I can
Yeah.
just take a day off every Tuesday. I'll do a little bit of
Exactly.
email. I'm just
Honey,
like at a cafe.
do you want to take the Hummer today? The
Yeah.
sports trip? What do you want to do? But
Mm.
now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of people in America who still go out to restaurants. We went by one of our local establishments, and the parking lot was absolutely full, which might explain why COVID's still bad. But anyway, tons of people still go out to dinner. Some people go to movies or whatever. Just not us. So,
Mm,
but one
mm.
day.
Yeah, well, man, I feel for you guys. It's been
Yeah.
a rough trot, but that's what you get when you let psychopaths get control of your government.
Exactly. Yeah. It ain't over
So the
just yet.
question, I guess,
Yeah.
is where to from here with Facebook?
Yeah.
Um, will the Australian government take this recent episode as an indication that they need to chop Facebook off at the legs in this country? Or have they learnt their lesson now that don't try and don't take a knife to a gunfight when Facebook's concerned?
It's too late.
Yeah.
Like you said, Facebook is a giant now. So I guess what's going to happen is there's going to be some agreement. The local media or whatever who they are will get some money, not as much as they wanted, and both sides can declare victory because that's what mature, rational adults do. You compromise. Both sides get to claim some kind of victory, and you move on. It's when one side doesn't budge and it just gets escalated. So we'll see what happens.
Funniest thing, part of it was after Facebook banned news content, the
Right.
Australian government said they were going to pull their Facebook advertising budget.
Good for them.
Well, you think about it. So Facebook's just refusing to carry media companies' content.
Right.
One big business refusing to carry the content of other big businesses.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, the government says we're going to pull our advertising from you. Now, Facebook probably didn't give a shit. They're like, it's like when you pull your dick out of your wife's pussy. They're like,
Didn't even notice.
didn't even notice,
Are you
didn't know it was
there?
in there in the first place.
Right. Oh, you're here. Oh, I thought it was a
Yeah.
dream. Okay.
Secondly,
Right.
that's the government stopping itself from being able to communicate its own message to the people. Obviously, that's an important platform for the government that it uses to try and convince people to vote for it again. So it's just a self-defeating measure. But again, it comes back to why is the fucking government involved in the first place? This is between big business A and big business B. Why is the government getting involved in this and then pulling its own money? Like it's taking a side in this scrap. Anyway, it's just bizarre, the whole thing, man. I just have to stand on the sidelines and laugh. But I think Zuckerberg won. Zuckerberg apparently has been directly negotiating on Zoom calls with the federal treasurer here, Josh Frydenberg. I think he's had the last laugh with this. He's demonstrated that he's got the whip and they're wearing the gimp suit. That's basically
reminds me of Vegas. He's got the whip and he's not afraid to use it. So
yeah. So we'll see what happens next.
Yes. Yeah.
So
What
that's
else is
it.
going on? That's it.
Nothing,
Yeah. No,
nothing, nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
Nothing's going on in the world.
Texas will eventually get it together. Um,
Well, let's
Trump
talk
will
about
eventually get it
Texas
together.
briefly,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I have read up on that in a little part.
Right.
Obviously, people will have heard this, but Texas got a massive freeze going on.
Yeah.
And they're still without power. Millions of people there are without power, to the
Yeah.
best of my knowledge.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, they got a freeze a lot like this, and a lot of bad things happened. And then that's when some regulatory agency or the federal authority, someone came in and said, look, this is really bad. Here's some things you need to do to get your act together. So if this happens again, because it's weather, it will, you'll be ready. Things will be a lot better this time. And because Texas prides itself on deregulation, they're the only state with its own power system,
Grid.
whatever the grid. Thank you. That they said thank you for your advice and threw it out. And now it took 10 years, but it happened again. And I guess the part that really shook me. I mean, I get it that winter freeze comes along, everything freezes up, people are without power, whatever. And we'll talk about that in a second. But what I did not truly appreciate was because it's a completely laissez-faire capitalist system, is that whenever there's a little bit of power and a huge demand, the value of that energy goes up. And so people are literally getting bills for $16,000, $10,000. And that's, I guess, just for this month or whatever. That's the part that should be truly criminal. But because of the deregulation, as far as I know, it is not. That's where everybody should go to hell at that point.
Yeah, my
So that's,
understanding
yeah.
is, and I haven't done a huge deep dive on this, but my understanding is that it was about 20 years ago or something, they deregulated the energy market
Yes.
in Texas, which means they're off the national grid, so they
Yeah.
can't export power to or
Exactly.
get power from the rest of the country. And
Exactly.
also, as you said, they did have another freeze many years ago, and they were advised to weatherize all of
Duh.
their
Sorry.
generation and delivery systems, because
Yeah.
that would cost money and
Hurt
decrease
profits.
hurts profits in the short term. They
Yeah.
decided not to do it, and so it's
Yeah.
happened again. And Chrissy's been showing me videos of people who already have no power, and then the water pipes in
Oh God.
their houses are bursting, and all this water's, so their houses are flooded.
Yes.
It's below zero freezing. They have no
Yeah.
power, like just unbelievable nightmares in the
Yeah.
world's most advanced economy,
Yes.
world's most successful economy, most powerful, richest country in the world. This kind of
Well,
fucking third world fucking shit going on. And of course, the conservative governor of Texas and the conservative media, like Fox News,
right.
are blaming it on windmills.
Fucking
Saying,
windmills. They
see,
have.
that's what happens
Yeah.
when you put windmills into a system.
Yeah.
It's all windmills. The windmills
Yeah.
stopped.
Well, it turns out that the windmills froze up because they weren't winterized, because somebody was doing a story on that very thing. And then they showed windmills in the Arctic going, oh, they'll work if you prepare them for fucking cold weather. So again, but of course that part gets left out of the Fox News story. So you thinking, yeah, it's if we all convert to windmills and things like this, and a storm comes along, we'll all be like that. Well, who wants that? So let's keep fossil fuels going. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. But it's, as I understand it, the clean energy side of Texas's grid is about 10% of the grid.
Yes.
But everything failed. It's not just the
Yeah. The
windmills that
whole
froze up.
exactly.
Everything failed. So what about the other
Selective memory.
90%? Well,
Don't know what you're
selective
talking about. Don't know
reporting.
what
They're
you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
reporting on that 10% that failed, but the whole thing failed because they didn't weatherize any of it.
Yeah.
But this is
I
what
couldn't.
happens when
Yes.
you let psychopaths be in
Yeah.
control of your government and your energy system. Psychopaths who put short-term profits over long-term success of the business, but also protection of the people.
Yeah. I think one definition of psychopath is to go to Cancun during a national crisis, not unlike a certain Australian politician who went where to Hawaii during the fires. So
Mm,
the fuck? I
mm.
mean, should have saw that one. But anyway.
Yeah, you're talking about Ted Cruz in this case, who
Yes.
went to Mexico during this and hid out
Yeah.
there until the
They
sort of
found out about him. He was, oh shit,
social
I got to get
media
back.
storm
I just,
forced him to
I
come
just
back.
dropped off my daughter. My daughter pressured me, teenage girls. Anyway, I'll go back now and help people.
Yeah. And of course, you had the mayor of Colorado City in Texas, I think, which isn't confusing, but
No.
how many Colorado cities are there? I think there's one
I,
in Arizona, one in Texas, probably none in Colorado, but anyway,
which
he,
is a great irony. Yeah.
he, obviously publicly, I think on Twitter said, this is all your problem. Don't expect the government to bail you out. Get off your asses, sort out your own issues. Stop expecting a handout.
The strong will survive, the weak will
Will
perish. And
perish.
some of the weak have perished because there was an 11-year-old boy who died of hypothermia. So
I
he's
heard
no
that,
longer
yeah.
employed. And his wife, for whatever reason, I don't know why, she's no longer employed either.
The 11-year-old boy's wife?
No, not even in Texas. Well, maybe in Texas, I don't know. But the mayor, his wife was also let go of her job because I think they're just hated now in their community, probably in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he came out there and said, hold on, I tweeted that as a private citizen, not as a mayor, but you were the mayor. But how do you tell?
Context.
This is off the record.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, this is what my book was all about. When you let psychopaths be in control of the system, they prioritize the wrong things.
Yes.
When you have Donald Trump in control of your COVID response, when you have the fuckwits in control of your energy system that you've got in Texas, this is what happens. This is the problem. The common underlying element in all of these tragedies that have happened in your country in the last year, and in the bushfire lack of response in this country, although they're slightly different. I've been thinking about the bushfires here and the cold, the Texas situation, and trying to figure out how are they similar and how are they different. Both are examples of the failure of governments to protect the people. We have bushfires here every year, like you do in places like California and Yosemite. Bushfires, we've always had bushfires. We'll always have bushfires. We've got management techniques in place. We do regular burn-offs every year, et cetera, et cetera. But from time to time, we have really bad bushfires that get out of control. That is known, and it's also been known for a long time. There were reports written, studies done, reports written for the federal government that as a result of climate change, it was going to get hotter and hotter in parts of Australia where bushfires are a problem, drier and hotter. Bushfires would be more frequent and would be worse and would be harder to put out. So investments are required in order to mitigate the threat of that. The government did next to nothing about preparing for that. So there is a failure on behalf of the government to prepare for something they should have prepared for in order to protect the people, and not just the people, also the animals, the livestock, etc.
The country
in Texas, slightly different. Yes, they were warned that they should weatherize their system, but governments didn't force corporations. Corporations were allowed to mismanage their infrastructure for the sake of profit over the protection of the people, over, a sense of responsibility, of, a duty of care to the people that they're providing the power to. So they're both failures of government. Texas also failures of corporations to, prepare
to their stockholders
adequately.
They're worried about their stockholders and the price of stock. Yeah,
except the ones that just died. Those stockholders, must have been some of those people that were stockholders.
Yeah.
So they were similar, but again, it's what happens when you have psychopaths in power that prioritize the wrong things. They prioritize short-term political success, short-term profits over long-term results, long-term success
Yes.
But again, their metrics for success are completely fucked as well. You know,
Right.
psychopaths' metrics of success are their own, you know, wealth, power, fame,
Yeah.
glory,
The size of my
not
yacht.
not the protection and safety of
The betterment. Yeah.
the people, you know,
We
of
need
society,
Augustus.
of the public.
We need to take some Augustus's blood, clone him, put him in a suit,
Mm.
teach him about modern day, and say, "Run this shit," because he cared.
Well,
You know.
an enlightened king,
Yeah, I'll do
Marcus
fine.
Aurelius
I'll
and
do it. Oh,
Augustus,
oh yeah, yeah. They'd be better at it than I would. Yeah.
an enlightened dictator is the best form of government. Hard to find, admittedly,
Rare. Yes.
rare, but
Rare.
definitely the best form of
Right.
government.
But until we find these people, could we just all agree? Let's just put women in charge because women have got the right priority over
We can't
men.
say this. We're famous misogynists and
Oh,
hater of women.
oh,
We can't.
oh.
Apparently, we're not
Scratch
allowed to
all
say that anymore.
scratch all that. Then sorry.
Despite us saying for like 8 years, put women in charge. They do a much
Please.
better job. We're famous
Yes.
misogynists now.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the internet
Yep.
for you. All right, that's the show.
Yep.
Good luck, everybody in Texas. You can't
Yes.
get that message because you have no electricity, so you won't be able to see this. But
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers.
thoughts and prayers. Ciao.
Ciao.